Welcome, everyone, to the Playing Books podcast. It is fantastic to have you back with us.
Great to be here.
I was driving here today, and I was doing all the things you do when you drive. Navigating, listening to the news, thinking about what I'm going to say in this intro. And I had this really powerful feeling of being in control. Like, I'm the captain of the ship, I'm steering, I'm making the decisions, I'm the CEO of me.
That's the default setting, isn't it? That feeling that there's a little person inside your head at the controls.
Exactly. We see ourselves as these, rational creatures. We make pro and con lists. But, and this is the big question for today, what if that's just a complete illusion?
What if the captain isn't actually steering the ship at all?
Yes. What if the ship is actually being moved by this huge, invisible underwater current that the captain can't even see?
That's the premise we are really getting into today. And it's both terrifying and, in a way, kind of liberating.
It really is. Today, we're exploring a book that just blows that whole idea of the rational man out of the water. It's The Social Animal, The Hidden Sources of Love, Character, and Achievement by David Brooks.
And this book is, it's a huge undertaking. I mean, Brooks basically synthesizes decades of research from neuroscience, psychology, behavioral economics.
All of it.
To try and answer this fundamental question. Why do we do the things we do? And his answer is, well, it's not our conscious mind that's in charge, it's the unconscious.
But the way he does it is what makes this book so special and why we wanted to do this episode of the podcast on it. He doesn't just give you the science.
No, it's not a textbook.
He creates these two fictional characters,
Yeah.
Harold and Erica, and we follow them from the moment they're born until the day they die.
It's such a brilliant storytelling device.
It is, because we see them fall in love, we see them fail, get jobs, get old, and at every step of the way, Brooks pauses the story and says, okay, here's the science behind what's happening in their brains right now.
So instead of just reading about, say, attachment theory, you feel it. You see Harold as a baby crying for his mother. It makes the science human.
So our mission for this episode is to follow their journey. And by doing that, we're going to explore this conflict between what he calls the level 1 unconscious mind and the level 2 conscious mind.
And we get to that central question. Are you the general on the platform, or should you be listening to your scouts?
Let's start right there. That metaphor, the general and the scouts, it's the whole thesis of the book, right?
It really is. It's the framework for everything else.
So paint that picture for us. Imagine you're on a battlefield. What does that look like in his model?
Okay, so picture a general. He's standing on a raised platform, maybe in a tent. He's got a map laid out in front of him.
Right. He's seeing the big picture, or he thinks he is.
He thinks he is. And he's thinking very logically, linearly. If I move this battalion here, the enemy will do that. That's your conscious mind. It's the voice in your head. It's slow, and it can only do one thing at a time.
It's the part of me that I think of as me.
Exactly. But the general isn't the army. The army is millions of little scouts, and they aren't on the platform with the map.
No, they're down in the mud.
They're in the mud. They're running through the forest. They're feeling the terrain. They're reacting instantly, intuitively, emotionally.
Yeah.
That is your unconscious mind.
The scale difference is the part that I had to put the book down. There's this statistic from Timothy D. Wilson that he cites.
Oh, the 11 million figure, it's just...
Yeah.
We get that down. It's
Okay,
unbelievable.
so at any given moment, your mind, your senses, everything, is taking in about 11 million pieces of information.
And that's everything. Like the feeling of my socks, the hum of the lights.
Everything. The temperature, the background noise, the tiny flicker in the corner of your eye. 11 million bits of data per second.
Okay. So of those 11 million bits, how many is the general, the conscious mind, actually aware of?
About 40.
40. Not 40,000. 40.
4. 0.
That is so humbling.
Yeah.
It's statistically zero. It's a rounding error. The general is sitting up there, completely convinced he's in charge, juggling his 40 bits of data, while the scouts are processing almost 11 million other bits that he never ever sees.
So when I get a gut feeling about someone or have a sudden intuition, that's not some kind of magic.
No, it's data. It's the scouts setting up a flare from the field, reporting on the 10,999,960 things you consciously ignored.
Wow. And this is where Brooks gets into this big historical idea, the difference between the French Enlightenment and the British Enlightenment.
Right, because this is an old debate. The French tradition, think Descartes, I think, therefore I am. It's all about the general. Reason is king.
And emotions are just static. They're noise that gets in the way of pure reason.
Which is how so many of us still try to operate, right?
Yeah.
We think if we could just suppress our feelings and be logical, we'll make better decisions.
But Brooks sides with the other tradition, the British Enlightenment.
Yeah, thinkers like David Hume or Adam Smith, they argued the exact opposite. Hume famously said that reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions.
Meaning the general works for the scouts, not the other way around.
Precisely. It's a total flip. Our emotions, our intuitions, our unconscious drives, those are the real engines of our lives. Reason is just the PR department that comes up with a good story afterward.
And it's so important to be clear about what he means by unconscious, because you hear that word and you immediately think of
Freud.
A dark, spooky basement filled with repressed memories and weird sexual urges. The item.
Oscar in the cellar, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not the modern view, and it's not Brooks's view. He describes the unconscious as an enchanted place.
I love that phrase. It's not a dungeon, it's a workshop.
Exactly. It's where your character is built. It's where your social skills live. It's how you can walk into a party and instantly know the vibe is weird. Your scouts are processing dozens of micro-expressions and tones of voice before your general has even figured out where the drinks are.
I think the most powerful illustration of this, for me, was the story of Elliot. This comes from the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio.
It's such a crucial case study. A tragic story, but just essential for understanding this.
So tell us about Elliot. He was a normal, successful guy.
Yeah, good family man, successful in business, but he developed a brain tumor, and the surgeons had to remove it. The operation technically was a success.
His IQ was unchanged, his memory was fine.
All his cognitive abilities were intact, but the surgery had severed the connections between his rational brain and his emotional centers.
So he basically became Mr. Spock,
Right.
a being of pure logic.
And you'd think, wow, that guy must be the most efficient person on the planet. But the opposite happened. His life completely fell apart.
He lost his job, his wife left him. He couldn't function.
He couldn't make a decision, even the simplest one.
Yeah.
And Damasio describes trying to schedule the next appointment with him.
Oh, this part is just agonizing to read.
Damasio asks, so when's a good time for you to come back? And Elliot pulls out his calendar. And for the next 30 minutes, half an hour, he just lists the pros and cons of every possible time slot.
Well, Tuesday at 2 is good because there's less traffic, but it might rain, which would make the drive unpleasant. Wednesday at 3 might work, but it conflicts with a potential errand.
On and on and on. He could analyze forever, but he could not choose. He couldn't feel that one option was better than another.
Because he had no somatic markers. That's Damasio's term.
Right. When you or I consider an option, our body gives us a tiny physical signal, a little flutter of excitement or a little tightening in the gut. It's a feeling. That's your emotional positioning system, your EPS, giving a value to that option.
It's the scouts attaching a weight to the data. This one's good. This one's bad.
Without that emotional weight, all the data points look identical, and reason is paralyzed. Pure reason isn't super efficient. It's completely impotent.
That just lands so hard. Emotion isn't the opposite of intelligence. It's a necessary component of it.
It's an information processing system.
Yeah.
And a very sophisticated one.
Okay, so let's take this from the lab and into the wild. Let's talk about love, or at least attraction.
Let's talk about Rob and Julia, Harold's parents.
Brooks uses their first meeting to explore all this science. But first, he sets the scene in this very specific world he calls the composure class.
Oh, this is Brooks, the sociologist, at his absolute best. He has such a sharp eye for these things.
Who are the composure class?
They're the modern meritocratic elite. The people who got good grades, went to the right schools, landed the high-status jobs in consulting or law or media.
And he has these perfect descriptions. The men, like Rob, are asexually handsome.
I know, that's so good. It just means handsome in a way that's safe, not threatening, polished.
And the women are sculpted beauties. But what I found fascinating was his breakdown of how they spend their money. They think they're sort of countercultural.
Right. They would never buy a big flashy yacht. That's considered vulgar.
Yeah.
But they'll drop $10 million on a rustic barn in the countryside that has, a sub-zero fridge and radiant floor heating.
Yes. Skimp on consumables, splurge on durables. You go to their massive home and they serve you like a single sad piece of turkey on a stale cracker for lunch.
It's all about signaling virtue and education, not just wealth. But when Rob and Julia meet at a resort, all that cultural sophistication it evaporates. And they're just two mammals. Biology takes over.
So let's look through their eyes. The male gaze first. Rob sees Julia across the room. What are his scouts actually looking for?
His scouts are running a fertility scan. It's that simple and that brutal. See, human females have concealed ovulation. Unlike other primates, there's no obvious physical sign when they're fertile.
Right.
So the male brain has evolved to look for proxy indicators, cues of youth and health.
So we're talking clear skin, symmetrical features, full lips.
And the big one, the waist-to-hip ratio. Specifically, the 0.7 ratio.
Why is that number so specific and so universal? You see it in ancient statues and on modern runways.
Because it's an incredibly honest signal. It indicates, one, that the woman's pelvic structure is wide enough for childbirth, and two, that she has the right kind of fat reserves, estrogen-driven fat, to sustain a pregnancy. But it also signals that she's not currently pregnant.
That's a biological green light.
It's a huge green light. So Rav's general is thinking, she looks nice. His scouts are screaming, optimal reproductive vessel located.
How romantic. So what about Julia? What's her filter? It's different, right?
It's very different because evolutionarily speaking, the reproductive stakes are much, much higher for the female.
A mistake for a man is a minor inconvenience. A mistake for a woman can be a decade of her life.
Exactly. So she is, by necessity, more risk-averse. Her scouts are running a trustworthiness scan. She's looking for signs of stability, status, and crucially, a willingness to invest.
This is where he uses that great phrase that women are sensitive smoke detectors.
The men are pigs bias. It's an evolutionary safeguard. It's much safer for a woman's genes to assume a man is untrustworthy and be wrong than to assume he's faithful and be wrong.
And they are just better at picking up the details to make that judgment.
Oh, massively better. The data he cites says women are something like 60 to 70% more proficient at remembering the details of a scene, where objects were, what people were wearing. Julia is absorbing everything about Rob, his shoes, his watch, how he interacts with the waiter, before he's even said a full sentence to her.
Which brings us to my favorite concept from this whole section, the flaw-matic.
We all have one. We have all deployed the flaw-matic.
It's that switch in your brain that can just instantly identify a deal breaker, a reason to just say nope and walk away before you get invested.
And it can be the smallest thing. In the book, he mentions mispronouncing the name Guth.
Yeah, if you say goeth, you're out.
You're done. For someone else, it might be that they spell your as Y-O-U-R in a text message. It seems trivial, but the scouts are using it as a proxy for a much bigger set of cultural and intellectual values.
So somehow, Rob and Julia pass each other's flaw-o-matic test. They go on a date, and the real unconscious dance begins.
Starting with what they order, the meal scene is just a comedy of social signaling.
Rob hates Merlot, but he can't order the same Cabernet as Julia because that's too copycat. But he feels he has to order a red wine to be, in sync.
So he orders the Merlot that he despises. It's all about mirroring and signaling compatibility.
And the mirroring becomes literal, right, with their language.
Yeah, this is a huge one. People with similar vocabulary levels tend to pair up. Their scouts are checking, are we using the same kinds of words? Are we in the same intellectual frequency?
And then there's the stuff we don't even see, like smell, the famous sweaty t-shirt study.
Yes. The MHC, or Major Histocompatibility Complex. This is your immune system's genetic code. And the studies are incredibly consistent. Women, when they smell t-shirts worn by different men, reliably prefer the scent of men whose MHC is most different from their own.
Which makes perfect genetic sense. You want to give your offspring the most diverse set of immune defenses possible.
Right. So when Rob and Julia lean in for that first kiss, they're not just being romantic. Their scouts are conducting a full-blown chemical analysis of each other's immune system.
What we call chemistry is actual chemistry.
It's actual chemistry.
Because they pass all the tests, they get married, and then the real work starts. The map meld.
Ah, yes. This is where the beautiful urge to merge crashes into the frustrating reality of cohabitation. You're taking two completely separate unconscious maps of how the world is supposed to work, and you're trying to smash them together.
And it's always over the dumbest things, like the toilet paper.
Over versus under. It seems so petty. But if your unconscious map says toilet paper goes over, and you walk in and see it's under, it triggers a tiny little stress response. A feeling that the world is slightly wrong.
Or Julia's ferocious attachment to sock wearing during intimacy.
Yes.
Oh.
Rob just can't understand it. But for Julia, there's some deep unconscious reason tied to comfort or security. And this is the daily friction of marriage.
This is what leads to the famous U-shaped curve of marital happiness.
Right. It starts really high when you're in that limerence phase. then it just nosedives during the child-rearing years.
Because you're both exhausted, you're not a priority, you're just surviving.
You're just trying to keep small humans alive.
Yeah.
But then, if the marriage makes it through that, happiness levels tend to climb back up again in the empty nest years in retirement.
So from this map meld, Harold is born. And now we get to see a mind being built from the ground up. This part of the book really changed how I think about parenting.
Me too. Because we tend to think of parenting as teaching, as an act of instruction.
Right. I need to teach him his colors, his numbers, the rules. But Brooks argues the primary job of a parent is limerence.
Limerence. That deep, emotional, resonant connection. The urge to merge. A baby's first need isn't to learn from the parent. It's to be with the parent, to connect.
And the biological mechanism for this is just incredible. The mirror neurons.
The discovery of mirror neurons in Parma, Italy, is one of the biggest neuroscience stories of the last 50 years.
So what happened?
They were studying macaque monkeys with electrodes in their brains, monitoring the neurons that control motor actions, like picking something up. One day, a researcher's in the lab, and he just reaches for a peanut to eat it himself.
The monkey is just watching.
The monkey is perfectly still. But the researchers look at the monitor and the monkey's brain. It's firing in the exact same pattern as if the monkey itself had reached for the peanut.
So neurologically, watching someone do something is the same as doing it yourself?
It's a simulation. We understand others by simulating their actions, and it turns out their emotions in our own brains. It's the basis of empathy. When baby Harold sees his mother Julia smile, his own smile neurons fire. He learned happiness by simulating hers.
Which makes the still face experiment so absolutely chilling.
Oh, it's brutal to watch. This is Dr. Edward Tronick's work. You have a mother and a baby, and they're playing, they're cooing, they're in sync. The baby is happy and engaged.
Then what's the instruction?
The mother is told to suddenly adopt a completely neutral, still, expressionless face.
A blank slate. Stone cold.
And the baby's reaction is immediate and devastating. Within seconds, the baby knows something is profoundly wrong. He tries to re-engage. He smiles, he points, he makes little noises.
He's trying to get the connection back.
And when the mother doesn't respond, the baby just falls apart. He looks away, his body goes limp, he becomes distressed and starts to cry these horrible, hopeless sobs.
It shows that we are not self-contained. We are not islands. We need other people to regulate our own emotional states.
We are open-loop systems. A secure attachment, like the one Harold has, gives a child a secure base. It tells his nervous system the world is safe. You can go explore.
And with that safety, his brain can start building its model of the world. He uses the ant colony analogy for this, emergent systems.
This is a tricky concept for our brains because we're obsessed with top-down control. We want to believe there's a CEO neuron in charge.
A general.
A general. But the brain, like an ant colony, is a bottom-up system. There's no dictator ant telling everyone what to do.
Right. No single ant knows the blueprint for the anthill.
Not at all. But the simple local interactions of thousands of ants, each following a few basic rules, results in this incredibly complex and intelligent structure. Intelligence emerges from the interactions.
So our thoughts aren't commands from a CEO. They're patterns that emerge from the chaotic firing of millions of neurons.
Exactly. And childhood play is the process of strengthening the useful patterns. When Harold pretends to be a tiger, it's not just frivolous. It's an intense cognitive workout.
Because he has to blend two different concepts.
Think of the processing power required. He has the mental file for Harold. He has the mental file for Tiger. And he has to create a third temporary reality. Harold Tiger. He has to know to growl, but not to actually bite his mom. It's incredibly complex.
He had that phase where he told everyone he was a sun creature.
Yes. He was completely convinced he was born on the sun. And to him, that wasn't a lie. It was just another blend. Imagination and reality are not separate boxes for a young child. And that ability to blend is the foundation of all adult creativity.
So while Harold is in this safe, imaginative, composure class world, we meet Erica, and her story is completely different.
Erica is the other side of the coin. She's Chinese Latina from a much tougher, less stable background. She doesn't have that safety net. She's an outsider from day one.
But that gives her a different kind of intelligence. If Harold's strength is depth, Erica's is social sharpness. She learns to think in networks.
Absolutely. Because she couldn't rely on a stable family unit, she had to master the broader social landscape. She learned to see her world not as a collection of individuals, but as a web of connections. Who has influence? Who talks to whom? Who is the key to getting things done?
She understood that the power isn't always in the nodes, it's in the lines that connect the nodes.
And her goal became to be one of those lines. She developed a personal motto: be the glue. She learned that the most valuable person in any system is often the one who connects different, separate groups.
This gets into a really interesting discussion about economics and the importance of trust.
It's so critical. Brooks makes the point that the wealth of a nation depends heavily on its radius of trust. In a low-trust society, he uses the example of a study on southern Italian peasants. You only trust your immediate blood relatives.
Which means you can't build a large company because you can't trust anyone outside your family to manage it.
Right. Every interaction requires guards and locks and lawyers and contracts. These are all transaction costs.
Yeah.
And they act like a massive tax on the whole economy. Everything is slower and more expensive.
So Erica's skill, her ability to build trust and be the glue, is actually a huge economic advantage. She lowers transaction costs.
She makes things happen.
Yeah.
But when she gets into the corporate world, that world almost destroys her. This is the tick metaphor.
This one hit a little too close to home for me. Explain the umwelt of the tick.
So this is a concept from the biologist Jakob von Wick's school. The umwelt is the relevant perceptual world of an organism. For a tick, that world is incredibly simple. It has no eyes, no ears.
It only senses three things, right?
Just three. The smell of butyric acid, which is in mammal sweat, the temperature of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the texture of hair. That's it. That is the tick's entire universe. Sweat, heat, hair.
It has no concept of music or the stars or love.
And Brooks's argument is that high-pressure, modern professional life turns us all into ticks. Our unwoke shrinks. We stop seeing the bigger picture. We only perceive the three things relevant to our job: the email in our inbox, the quarterly profit report, the deadline.
You become hyper-focused and you lose all perspective. I have absolutely been a tick.
It creates this dangerous groupthink. Erica sees it at her consulting firm. Everyone reads the same 3 articles in the morning, gets the same alerts on their phones. By 10 a.m., those all reach the exact same conclusions about the market.
It's intellectually homogenous.
Yeah.
Efficient, but very brittle.
So Erica tries to fight back against Tick World. She institutes Fun Fridays.
Which sounds like the most cringy, mandatory, fun HR initiative ever.
It does. But her unconscious intuition was spot on. She knew that to break the tick mindset, you have to force people to connect on a human level. You have to rebuild the social web. You can't leave your social self at the door and expect a company to thrive.
Eventually, the dreamer Harold and the striver Erica meet, and they fall in love. And this is where Brooks really gets into the mechanics of love, not just attraction. Limerence.
He uses this beautiful metaphor from the 19th century writer Stendhal, the salt mine of Salzburg.
Right. What's the metaphor?
Stendhal observed that if you take a plain, dead branch and you toss it into an abandoned salt mine and you come back a few months later,
It's completely transformed.
it's covered in these shimmering, intricate salt crystals. It looks like it's made of diamonds. Stendhal called this crystallization.
And that's what falling in love does.
That is what the unconscious mind does to the person you love. Harold meets Erica, and his scouts immediately get to work, coating her in these glittering crystals of perfection. Her flaws aren't just invisible, they're transformed into virtues.
So her impatience becomes drive. Her stubbornness becomes principled.
Exactly. It's a form of delusion, but it's a necessary delusion. And it's not just an emotion, a feeling. Brooks cites the researcher Arthur Aaron, who argues that romantic love is a motivational state.
Like hunger or thirst.
Precisely. When you're thirsty, you don't just have a feeling of thirst. You have an overwhelming drive to find water. It orients your entire being. Love is the motivational drive to merge your life with another's.
And to sustain that drive, you have to maintain the delusion. You need the crystals.
You have to believe your partner is, in some objective sense, special and above average. Self-deception is a key ingredient for a lasting bond. If we saw our partners with cold, perfect objectivity all the time, maybe no one would stay together.
So they build this life together. And as they age, the book's focus shifts. It moves away from achievement and more towards character. Harold starts thinking about what he calls the big shaggy.
That's his name for his own unconscious. He has this realization that for the first 40 years of his life, he was trying to be the general, trying to command the big shaggy.
But you can't command it. It's too big, too powerful.
You can't steer it like a ship. You have to. You have to navigate it. You have to train it. And that brings us to the idea of morality.
This is where he brings in Jonathan Haidt's work on the moral taste buds. I find this framework so helpful.
It's incredibly clarifying, especially for understanding our polarized world. Haidt's idea is that our moral sense is like our sense of taste. It's not just one thing. It has different receptors.
Like sweet, sour, salty, bitter.
Exactly. And in the modern West, particularly among liberals, morality has been reduced to basically two taste buds. Care versus harm, don't hurt others. And fairness versus cheating, treat everyone equally.
But that's not the full menu of human morality.
No. For most of human history, and for conservatives today, there are at least three other crucial taste buds. Loyalty versus betrayal, authority versus subversion, and sanctity versus degradation.
So a sense of belonging to your group, respecting tradition, and seeing some things as sacred.
Right. And Harold realizes that a well-lived life, a life of character, requires cultivating all the moral taste buds, not just one or two. You need a sense of loyalty, a sense of reverence.
And this character isn't built by thinking noble thoughts.
Not at all. It's built by habit, he quotes Aristotle. We acquire virtues by first having put them into action. You don't become courageous by reading about courage. You become courageous by doing one small courageous thing, and then another.
You're training your scouts.
You're creating muscle memory for the soul, so that when a real crisis comes, you don't have to think. The general doesn't have to issue an order. The scouts just react in the right way, automatically.
So as we get to the end of Harold's story, the book becomes this beautiful reflection on wisdom and aging. And there's this one finding about health that is just stunning, the social secret of longevity.
We spend so much time and money on diet and exercise and cholesterol, all important. But the data he presents is overwhelming. Social isolation is as bad for your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
And on the flip side, connection is like a wonder drug.
It's incredible. Just joining one group that meets once a month reduces your risk of dying in the next year by 50%.
50%. That is better than any medication on the market.
It is, because we're those open-loop systems. We co-regulate each other's physiologies. Harold and Erica live long lives, not just because of genetics, but because they stay deeply connected to each other and to their community.
And as he reflects on his life, Harold tries to figure out what wisdom really is. It's not just being smart.
No. He makes a great distinction. Intelligence is having a lot of information in your mental file cabinet. It's knowing facts. Wisdom. Wisdom is about the web.
What does he mean by the web?
It's associational intelligence. A wise person has lived long enough and seen enough patterns that their scouts can connect seemingly unrelated things. They can look at a new situation and their unconscious says, this is a bit like that family argument from 1982 mixed with that business deal from 1995. They see the underlying rhythm of things.
It's pattern recognition on a grand scale.
The general thinks in straight lines. The wise person thinks in webs.
Harold's final judgment on his own life is so moving. He's not looking at his resume or his bank account. He asks himself a different question.
He asks, did I deepen myself? Did I manage to transcend the life of the tick?
And he realizes that his conscious self, the general he was so proud of for so many years, was never really in charge. He was just a servant to the hidden kingdom, the big Shaggy.
He finally learned to surrender to that deep underwater current, and it carried him home.
It's such a profound and, I think, a more humane way of looking at a life. It takes some of the pressure off. You don't have to consciously control and optimize every single second.
No, your job is to cultivate the garden, to tend to your scouts, feed them good things, train them with good habits, and then you have to trust them.
So as we start to wrap up this episode of the Playing Books podcast, I really want to make this practical for everyone listening. What do we do with all this?
I think the number one takeaway is a complete shift in strategy. If there's something in your life you're struggling with, a bad habit you want to break, a project you're stuck on, stop trying to general your way through it.
Meaning, stop just trying to use more willpower. Don't just yell at the army to march harder.
Exactly. That almost never works. Instead, be a clever general. Change the environment. If you want to stop eating junk food, don't rely on willpower every time you open the pantry. Just don't buy the junk food in the first place. Make it easy for your scouts to do the right thing.
Hack your own unconscious. And I would challenge everyone listening to think about their own flaw-o-matic. What are the quick judgments you make about people? And could you maybe just turn the sensitivity down on that a little bit?
That's a great one.
Yeah.
And also, think about your moral taste buds. Is your diet too narrow? Are you only focused on fairness and maybe ignoring the moral value of loyalty or sanctity? Try to expand your moral palette.
Now, we've talked for a while here, but we have truly only scratched the surface. The actual story of Harold and Erica, their lives, is so rich in detail.
Oh, absolutely. To get the full emotional impact, you have to read the book. Again, it's The Social Animal, The Hidden Sources of Love, Character, and Achievement by David Brooks.
please, we really encourage you to go out and buy a copy. It's one of those books that will change how you see yourself and the people around you. And while you're at it, find David Brooks on social media and tell him what you thought.
Ask him if he thinks the composure class still spends their money the same way. I'd be curious to hear his take on that.
That's a fantastic question. We'd also love to hear from you. Which moral taste bud do you think drives your decisions the most?
Fairness? Loyalty? Let us know on our social channels.
Yeah, please do. Connection is the key to a long life, remember?
That's right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Plain Books Podcast.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Please follow, subscribe, and share this show with someone in your life. We will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.